If you don't do anything to your dog and you just follow these certain principles, you will have a better life than most people with their dogs. Hello everybody, welcome to Zen Dog. This is Sina or Sun, and I'm here to help you help your dog. Today we're going to be speaking about a very special topic, which is love-based training principles. Why am I making this video is because I have trained about 1,000 dogs, and aside from all the tools and techniques that I teach to trainers, I've realized that there's a big gap between the training tools that I give the people and the understanding of the dog and so on, and also how they need to have some certain sets of principles in order for those techniques and tools to be applied the best way for the dog possible. So in the love-based training principles, we have 7 main principles that we need to follow if you want to have a dog that's peaceful, that's calm, that's loved in the right way that they assume what love is, not what we assume what love is, and just in general having a very harmonious life together. If you don't do anything to your dog and you just follow these certain principles, you will have a better life than most people with their dogs. Number 1 is calmness and peacefulness. So what do I mean by that? Many times I see many clients that I work with have a lot of tension from perhaps their work or maybe their kids or lifestyle or whatever it is, and they usually bring that tension to their dog. This is a massive problem because if you're in a stressful or frustrated state, what happens is that you're most likely going to have shallower breaths. And it is scientifically proven that if your breaths are a lot more shallow and you're in a stressful state, your dog can sense it, and that's going to put your dog into a hyperactive mode, or it's also going to make them stressed. It's really important to make sure that while you're training with your dog or while you're interacting with your dog, you have this calm, peaceful, serene demeanor. I know it's hard, but it's good to practice it anyway. And I think our dog could be a very good start for that. So maintain a peaceful attitude during your training. One more thing that I can also recommend here is to make sure that your shoulders are not super tense, your body is not tense, you're not holding your hand like this, your eyebrows are not furrowed like this. So just relax as much as you can and try to breathe deeply and be as relaxed as you could possibly be. I've actually just released a video from a live session that I had with a client who was going through a stressful time with the dog because the dog wasn't listening and so on. And I actually break down the tools here. If you want, you can watch the video right here. So the second principle is going to be awareness and focus. The reason I'm bringing this up is because many times if you're not going to be present in that moment as you're training, and if you're not going to have the awareness, then what's going to happen is that you're going to be missing communication signals from your dog, which is something that you have to always adjust with in order to know how is going to be your next step. Many times I'm training with clients and I see them just not being present. If you're really focusing on an outcome there, it's not really going to help us to not be present in that second or in that moment. If you are, for example, telling your dog sit and the dog doesn't sit and you're just repeating sit, 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 which is a very common problem that most people do with their dog, then what's happening is that you're basically training your dog to not respect you, to just expect to be heard a command multiple times in order to maybe have some behavior out of that. So that's just what I mean by awareness. Or for example, we are seeing our dog interacting with another dog and we are not aware enough to look at the dog's state. Are their paws like this? Are the paws open? Are the eyes tight? Are the eyes not tight? Are the eyes relaxed? And so on, tail and everything else. If you're not going to be able to read our dog's body language, then in that case, we're not going to be very successful to estimate what's the next behavior is going to be. Maybe they were just going to bite that dog off and kill him, or maybe they were just going to be playful, or maybe neither. It's really good to know that information. So according to that information, we could have a better decision. And of course, you have to have the education to know what the body language and so on is. However, if you don't have the awareness and focus, then it's just, even if you have the education, you're not going to be able to be there to be able to observe it. So that's why we have that principle there. Also, another point here is to try to stay away from your phone if you're training with your dog. Just be really in the present moment, and aside from all of these, just really try to enjoy and relax, because that's, if you're enjoying and relaxing training with your dog, then that's really all you need, because as you enjoy, they enjoy, and if it's a positive experience for both of you, then you're a lot more likely to keep doing it. And as the training with your dog kind of never ends, it goes on until forever in a way, unless you've trained your dog very well, then maybe until 3-4 years maximum. It's a lifestyle. It's never going to go away, basically. And in order for you to embody this lifestyle, you better have a better time doing it than hating it. Number 3, consistency and persistence. Actually, this is something that I've recently came to an understanding of, and that is most of the time when I'm called for a training session, if the client had the patience to actually really be persistent about what they wanted, they wouldn't have needed me. For example, I had a client who was telling me my dog doesn't stay when I'm outside in a position that I want him to be. We checked, and all she had to do was to just recalibrate the dog 5, 6, 7, 10 times. And the dog realized, okay, you want me to stay here. And of course, we were being fair. The dog had a good run. The dog had all the water it needs and everything else. It was very well taken care of. And then we were just giving it a structure. So after doing this for 10 times, which looked a little bit ridiculous for somebody who doesn't have the experience, but sometimes you have to repeat the same thing over and over and over and over until your dog realizes that you're being serious and these boundaries and the structure that you're projecting onto your dog is here to stay. Of course, those boundaries and the structure has to be in a fair way, which we also will cover in the next principle. So set clear boundaries and a structure through consistent actions. For example, if you have made a decision that your dog is not allowed to be on the couch, make sure you stick to it. Don't skip it if you're drunk. It's just gonna make them a little bit more confused if he's allowed on the couch now and then he's not allowed on the couch tomorrow. So it's to really stick to it. Or another case that actually happens often is that when I do the leash walking training, then people don't stick to it. You know, they're like, oh, this is gonna take a really long time. I have to go to work and so on. You need to understand that if you really embody this principle, which is consistency and persistence, what happens is that you'll have a tough week. I get it. It's going to be a lot of work for your dog to adjust to you and you to harmonize with them. But after the 1 week that is done, then you will have a beautiful walk for the rest of your life with your dog. I personally prefer to have that week of hell and have the rest of my life being harmonious than just not getting it done on that week and then continuously make that mistake. So that's why we say it's really important to be consistent and have persistence. Also, one more thing that you can leverage here is to set proper outcomes and visualize them. So what is the outcome that you're having in mind here? For example, you want your dog to perfectly walk on the leash. Make sure that you're taking a step every day towards that. So this is point A, your dog doesn't walk on the leash, and this is point B, when your dog is perfectly walking on the leash. Keep that frame in mind and stay consistent and persistent until you reach this. Because the sooner you do it, the easier it's going to be for both of you and the more harmonious and the more beautiful your relationship is going to be as you're going to be giving each other what you need from each other. Number 4 is going to be about compassion and fairness. What I mean by that is if you're doing something to your dog, ask yourself whether you would be happy if this action that you're doing to them would have been done to you. Whatever, punishing them or, like putting them in the bathroom as another form of punishment, or making them stay in a corner for no reason, and so on. You get the idea. Is this action cool if it happened to you? Would you be happy if this happened to you or not? It's good to not mix this up with a structure, because a structure is a form of love. Structure is what is necessary for us to have with our dogs living in a city, because the city has a structure, and without a structure, your dog actually will be in danger. So always ask yourself, would I be cool if this happened to me? Would I be cool if the dog did that to me or not? That's really important to keep in mind. You also need to prioritize trust building and nurture them with positive interactions, and mainly with positive reinforcement. If you could do only positive reinforcement and that's what your dog responds to, then stay to that. And in most cases, that's mainly enough for you. And even if you're going to be doing positive inhibition, make sure that your dog is not in pain and not in a way that's going to hurt them. As we mentioned already, fairness and compassion. And one more thing for compassion and fairness is that, is what you're expecting from your dog's behavior fair? So a misbehavior is basically anything that in your fair expectation your dog is not doing. Sometimes I see people getting frustrated because they're like, oh, my dog is not coming back off the leash, and I'm like, so how long did you lose the long leash? And they were like, oh, I don't have a long leash. I'm like, that's why. You shouldn't graduate from the long leash too early. So fair expectation is really important. How long are you putting in? How long are you taking out? Remember, this is just like another work in a way, but as you embody these principles, it's going to feel a lot more like a harmonious lifestyle and building a relationship than anything else. So put the work in, have the proper expectations, so it doesn't make you feel frustrated and it doesn't bring up unrealistic expectations from your dog's behavior. The last point for this one is going to be developing empathy towards your dog's emotional needs. So make sure that you give them lots of pets, lots of love in a way that they assume is love and not what you assume is love. Next one, which is very important, and I've seen this go wrong many, many times, is clear communication. Humans are basically conditioned to only assume communication is through verbal communication, because we don't use pheromones anymore to get information from our surroundings. We don't really use the body language as much unless you've studied it or you have kept it with you or you really have a good sense of intuition and so on. But in the dog world and the animal world, verbal communication is not the primal way that they communicate with each other. And this is where signals, which is anything that elicits behavior to anything, is coming in, and then hand signals is basically a priority to your sound signals. So for example, if you're telling your dog sit and your dog doesn't know what sit is, then how is that going to work? You know, like it's as if you're speaking French to somebody who speaks another language, like Arabic or something. So it's not really understanding for them. So if you're telling them sit, it means like nothing to them. So you need to teach them what sit is, and that is basically doing it through your hand signals. So you hold the treat in your hand and you bring it up and forward, and that's going to order their spine to sit down, because as they look up, that's how it happens. This is just one good case of explaining what this is. And also another one that I see often is when people just keep saying no to their dog, and no means nothing for them. So make sure that you clarify what no means for your dog, because otherwise it's just not going to be fair and you're not going to be having a clear communication with your dog. And if you don't have a clear communication with your dog, it could go very wrong. And most of the time that I've trained in my life, I've seen that clear communication has been a big problem. Keep that in mind. And also one more tip here is to make sure in the beginning you want to condition them only with the hand signal, and then you want to add the sound signal. And after that, after it's done for a day or two and your dog is accustomed to that, you want to take away the hand signal and use the sound signal first and then the hand signal if it's necessary. The reason we do this is because we want them to also get used to the sound signal and not just the hand signal. And the hand signal is just coming complementary. For example, if your dog listens to sit at home, and then you went down to the park and then there's a lot more stimulations around and your dog doesn't listen to your command anymore. First of all, there's a lot of reasons, but if it was due to communication, they're a lot more likely to listen to you if you use your hand signal here, for example. And remember to always mix it together with the sound, and then eventually you want to graduate to only sound, because that's where we eventually want to be. So to keep that in mind when it comes to communication with your dog, obviously don't repeat your commands. Also be very patient here. So for example, I've seen so many times when people are trying to teach their dog down and just pull the hand down over and over and over. The dog is like, what's happening? Are you dancing in front of me? What's going on? So if you're pointing to your dog, signaling to your dog to lie down, keep your hand there until your dog does it. Sometimes you just need some time to process information, and that's totally fine. So allow them to make the mistake, allow them to do that, but don't repeat yourself. So make sure that you're patient and you're waiting for them to listen to the command. After that, you can obviously reward it, and you'll see that next time they're gonna listen to it a lot more than you just repeating the same hand movement. Number 6 is going to be adaptability and flexibility. Be open to modify your training methods, as each dog's training style may differ. So this is a very big one that I also see that people fall into this bracket of positive only, balanced and so on. I guess those are the main two ones. It really doesn't matter. As long as you are kind to your dog and you're not going to be, in a way, be aversive to them and not punish them, but you're inhibiting a behavior, it's totally fine. If you're using, for example, the sound to stop them from approaching someone, or if you're using the leash to pull them back a little bit, to pull them away from the situation that they have to be in. Obviously, it's the best case if positive reinforcement is your only choice, but don't be shy to also inhibit them, but in a way that doesn't hurt them. This is actually something that I've had a very hard time to explain to people, that as I think Nino says it very good. He says, you're manipulating the predator. So keep that in mind, whatever it takes, really. I mean, obviously be fair, be kind, and all the other principles, and make sure that they're not in pain. But don't just stick to one ideology when it comes to training, as every and each dog is different. And the other one is going to be adjusting to the changes in the environment. So for example, you had, again, a perfect sit at home, and now your dog is not sitting. Then take your dog away from that stimulation heaven place. And for example, maybe for the next step, practice sit in front of your main door. And maybe next step, once that is done, practice it in your courtyard. Next step in front of your house, and then move it slowly there. Remember, everything is gradual. You also have to have the proper understanding of what is fair for us to achieve in that sense or not. If my dog is not listening to my sit command outside, that means that I'm basically going too fast. I need to slow down and go back to the first step and do it properly from there and build it up from there. Training a dog is like building a muscle. You can't really have 6 packs in one night. It takes a continuous effort and actions in order to get there. And number 7, and the last one, is going to be respecting their individuality. This is a very tricky one, and it might trigger some people, but I'm only here to share my truth and what I know, so it's fine if you hit me, all good. Respect their individuality in a way that, first of all, you need to understand that you are not their owner. These are individual beings, they have their own feelings, they have their own ways of living life. Of course, you're structuring them, of course, you're giving them love and so on. But don't put yourself on a hierarchy that you're their owner and you're the alpha and so on. Just be with them, be next to them, just like this. Obviously, this also has a balance to it. You don't want them to always be with you, always next to you, always on your lap, because those will also lead to misbehaviors later in life. So you got to keep a very good balance here when it comes to respecting their individuality. So for example, if I find them being super cute, I'm not gonna just like always approach and pet them. Or for example, if I'm reaching for their head to pet them and the dog pulls back, I'm going to respect their individuality and I'm not gonna force my pet onto them. For example, if they're sleeping, I'm not gonna pet them because they're sleeping and they're having fun. There are so many signals that your dog gives you that doesn't necessarily mean what we think it is, because anthropomorphism is also a big problem with us in this day and age of having dogs. For example, if a dog licks as you're petting them and they're trying to lick your face, it's not necessarily them kissing you, it's just telling you that they're uncomfortable with what you're doing. So watch out for that, hugs and stuff like that. Of course, it really depends on every individual and every dog because it's different, but most of the time we just project too much humanity onto them. And as if it's our dog, then in that case, we don't respect their individuality. So this is, I think, the very important question to ask yourself. I've mentioned it a few times. Are you loving them for them or are you loving them for you? Because we're following all these love-based training principles in order to have a harmonious life. And we need to understand and become aware of our own tendencies of whether we pet them too much or make them dependent on us because of our own needs. For example, if they're always on our lap and then they're not going to be on our lap, then they're going to be feeling maybe stressed, or maybe they're going to develop separation anxiety if I want a lap dog. Is it okay? Yes, it is. Is it fair for the dog? It's not, because the dog has to also sniff around and interact with other dogs and so on. Or for example, we're going to pass another dog and then we project something is going to happen and then tense the leash and then pick up the dog and leave. We're basically creating a ticking bomb here. Become aware of their individuality and their needs, what they need in order to thrive and not just survive, and look at them as a separate thing and not just your thing, that's your way and so on. I know it might be triggering, but do your best to respect their boundaries. The same way that you want them to respect your boundaries. Dual balance, right? Like you do this and they do that for you. So the expectation is also fair on both sides, as this is a relationship in a way. For the last bit, make sure that your actions stem from a genuine desire to improve their life and their experience. So these were the 7 principles in order to have a beautiful bond with our dog and make everything seamlessly flow together. If you embody these principles and on top of that learn the training techniques and all the tools, you're going to have a beautiful life with your dog, and as you respect them, they respect you back, and vice versa. I hope this was helpful for you, and applying these is going to bring you a lot of benefit into your relationship with your dog and everything else around you. Leave a comment if there is any question. Let me know what you think about this video, which one you agree with, which one you don't. Give us a like if this video was helpful to you, as it really helps us to grow this channel. Thank you very much. See you in the next one.